Wat kon harada sa haguego? Hey, wagat sanuni sa kato ne nua winizrade. Ana niya gahewe nam de hadaswan no hodli wat dache. Ne watun rada no hosungwawi ne tinin sta ne no hunsage. Ne jotko se wararaksi no hosungwawi ne skana ganingoriu tanu guano kwatsara. So which means we should always remember the things our Creator put here on our Mother the Earth, that we should work together, have a good mind, peace, and love for one another. And so welcome to the second day of our seed conference here in Ganawage. And yesterday was really awesome day, and today it's going to be the same. You know, over the years and my involvement in seed saving and traveling to many parts of the world, I was invited to a world conference in Greece a couple of years ago, and then the COVID started. So I was, but just before that, we in that fall time, there was a group of us, because we were invited. We were gonna from different native communities, so we were going to make a whole like indigenous group to go there. But then the COVID happened, and like everyone else, we've been managing and surviving the best that we could. At least maybe the one good thing that came out of it, a lot of these Zooms were able to happen, so that helped a lot of things in different ways. Or otherwise, we'd probably be more poor than we were before. But anyways, so the whole idea was to have presentations for of various aspects. And as I also keep on saying, when we're looking at food sovereignty and food security, it's not just to learn about planting potatoes. There's soil preparation. There's all these things, that permaculture, from greenhouses to food production, fruit trees, berries, all the things people have interest in. And so yesterday and today, all of the presenters are people that I know personally for a long time. So I'm very honored to refer to them as my good and dear friends, that I know that this is what they do. You know, I know a lot of times people have interests, but then after a while, some people just kind of, well, their mind goes somewhere else, and that's okay. But the people that I have coming here, I know continuous, and you know, and they experience the same things we do. You know, they go through hardships, they learn the hard way. The weather happens the same in everybody's yard. If it doesn't rain, it doesn't rain here, it doesn't rain there, and they learn with their struggles. And if it rains too much or it's too cold, all these things affect everybody the same. And so the ones that keep on doing those things, they learn, we learn, and there's things that we have that we can pass on to each other and our children. And that's what it's all about. We always talk about 7 generations, so this is a big part of that. And food is like the most important aspect, like within our culture. And as she said yesterday, all our ceremonies revolve around the maintenance of the garden. So, you know, if there was a name at all of our religion, it would be called Jonheiko, what supports our life. And so all of these elements in balance, but it's what we practice and what we live. So when we're doing things out in the field, I know a lot of us are not first language speakers, but we try our best. We talk about these in our language. When we opened the gardens there out in the field at the Three Sisters Mound, that's what we did. We had tobacco burning, and we sang Towisaha, women's planting songs, and then we went along. And that's what we did. And most of all, we followed planting by the moon. So the first time we did it, I think we planted it, I think it was around the 27th of May. But the corn was beautiful. And like, if we had some of them here, the ears were all this size, everything. So this is applying the knowledge that I have, but these are things that I've learned from older people. And one of my late dear friends, Norton Rickard in Tuscarora, who's kept that variety in his family going for generations. So, anyways, having said all that, this morning I have a dear friend of mine, Teprine. I forget her last name. I just call her Madame Bijou. You know, and we're on a first name. We're on a first name basis. So she's going to make a presentation about soil and uh, soil management. Um, Daniel Breeze was supposed to come this morning, and Ramses the second, he's supposed to come and he's going to talk about how to build the pyramids like he did long time ago. Well, I think he's a Ramses 5000 by now. So he's going to present on greens, microgreens. This gentleman has a greenhouse here. You see he's produce in stores all around the Montreal area. So we asked him to speak about that. We went to see his greenhouse 2 years ago, and it's unbelievable. He has one tomato plant that is about 60 feet long or something like that. So he has the root over here and it goes like this in his greenhouse. Then it folds back and it goes this way and it goes this way. It's amazing to see things like that. And as part of cleaning his greens and that, he's involved in, I don't know what you call the word, utilizing all kinds. So he's got these old washer machines. So he's got it all fixed up, and he puts his lettuce in there, and he cleans it and washes it. It's amazing. So the people who invent some of those stuff, he's involved with all these things there to reuse, recycle, and all part of his knowledge. And the name of his farm, it's in French, so I don't know how to say the word, but it means hickory trees or the hickory. So I said in our language, it's called Ononokara. So he said, I'm going to officially get my name on my farm changed to Ononokara. So that's really interesting. So when he gets here after, along with Ryan Young, who's a city councilor in St. Anne de Bellevue, and in St. Anne de Bellevue, if you go there along their bike trail, there's fruit trees all the way down that have been established for a number of years, and it's there for people to pick what they need. And that, so he's going to present on about how a city council can support agricultural things like this in any community. So that is our for today. We also have a seed company. Two seed companies are going to set up here after, like during the lunchtime and this afternoon. They'll be here. So and then next year, we're going to kind of rearrange it maybe differently. And if we utilize this place, this is such a beautiful place. Wow, the wood, everything. And it's like Mike Woodrow. He was my teacher about all kind of things. And he always talked about the spirit and the spirit of the wood and so on. And so when you come in here, what you feel, that's the spirit of the wood, you know? So, and that's the way our ancestors look at it. And it's such a good feeling. So next year, we're going to design it maybe more different, but because there's a small conference room downstairs, so what we'll probably do is have some conferences downstairs and things going up here. So but we'll organize it a little bit more different. We're learning as we're going along too. So, but so far I think we're off to a real good start. We just got to learn a little bit of Elvis next year and we'll be all shook up. Okay, now, so Madame Bijou.
Great. It's gonna go again. I'm really honored to be welcomed to your community, to be here with you and your families and your ancestors. I brought my ancestors with me. This is my grandmother's bean pot, and I thought it very important to tell a little story about how I met Stephen. I was working in a job that I had no experience in at the permaculture convergence that happened about 10 years ago now in Freligsburg. And I was learning a little bit about permaculture. I didn't know a lot about it, but what I did know was that a lot of the teachings in permaculture seemed to be First Nation or Indigenous teachings, and we had no First Nation or Indigenous representation. So I kind of was like, I'm going to see if there are local people who are working with seeds and farming and gardening. And I went online and very quickly found Stephen online, and I contacted him. and invited him to come and to not only present, but to open and close ceremonies with an Wabanaki seed farmer as well, because where I live, my farm is in Wabanaki territory, unceded Wabanaki territory, and that experience basically created long-term friendships with a whole bunch of really incredible people who sort of saw something potential, I guess, in me. And Stephen right away offered me seeds. And he said, "Are you interested in growing this?" And I didn't really know anything about it. And I said, "Sure, why not? I'll try this out." And and since then, every year, he comes to visit me at the farm, and he's like, "Are you still interested? Are you still good?" And every year I go, "Whew, yes." It's like, it's important work, and it's hard work, but I love it, and I love the fact that I get to be outside, and I have dirty hands, and that I'm learning how to grow food that's not just good for me and my community, but that I can share with people outside of my communities, and that I can offer some sort of security to my family and friends. And so when Stephen gave me this, which is, he sculpted this, and he says he does not entirely sure why he had to give it to me. I thought it was appropriate to put it next to, so it's a bean, the woman with beans in her hair, or her hair is the beans, and I thought it appropriate to put it next to my grandmother's bean pot, because she is the one who taught me about caring and about feeding my family. She was an incredible woman. Both of them passed on this year, both my grandparents together, and it was a tremendous loss for my family, but at the same time, like, taught me so much about like of family, and of how to make a little bit seem like a lot. You know, they were 10 children, and I'm part of 9 children, and I have like 50 cousins, and I come from really big families, and we were able to feed each other with the food that we had, and so I thought it appropriate to sort of have them meet each other. My grandma's getting to meet Stephen. And so I thought today, Stephen had asked me to present my seed farm. So I have a seed farm. And to present a project that I'm working on this year, which is a living soil project, or a project that's going to increase the life in my soil, because all soil is living. And sometimes we just need to bring in new neighbors and new people into our soil. So yes, my seed company is called Le Noyau, which sort of directly translates to the pit or the core. I am a farm in Stanbridge East, which is about an hour from here. I'm right on the border of Vermont. I produce different types of seeds. So I produce flowers and market garden seeds, perennials, medicinals. We produce individual seed packs, but I'm sort of in the process of going towards bulk. I think it's more harmonious with my lifestyle, and I'm a one-woman show, so I don't have a big amount of staff around me. So I think moving towards bulk is a much more harmonious way of working with the seeds and nature, so that I'm in a good way, taking my time, slowing everything down. I have indigenous seeds. I have Haudenosaunee seeds, because Stephen has shared them with me. I have Wabanaki seeds. I am newly incorporated as a not-for-profit. So the idea is to work towards education and finding ways to support other really amazing projects like Gantega, and people who inspire me to find grants and to work with them in a way that it's not about me creating something and then trying to get some money the relationship is a much more interactive and uplifting, and less about some sort of commercial exchange. That's sort of the process after 5 or 6 years of doing that is not nurturing me in the way I would like it to, and I would like to sort of bring seeds back into a communal way. That being said, I still have like 5 years worth of seeds, so I'm still going to be in business as far as a seed, like a seed pack person, for probably the next 3-4 years as I sell out my stock. And we try to take a permaculture and agroecology approach. Yeah, so that's just sort of like context of the farm. So I kind of have the perfect farm for seeds, because with seed production, you need to have distances between other farms. Can you see? Are you good? With other farms, so you need to be able to have isolation distances so that your stuff doesn't cross. And not only do I have the river going around me, but we have a cemetery in front. We have lots of trees in the front. We have trees all around the bank. It makes it a little complicated when across the street they're growing corn, but they also rotate their fields, and they have hay, soy, and wheat. So I try to rotate that around. It's a really lovely place to raise my children and to be with my family. So Graham yesterday was talking about different ways to create your beds. So because I'm hoping the goal is to move the farm towards a teaching farm, we have different types of beds in our farm. So these are swales. Because I have a sandy loam, a lot of water just falls right through. And so these are ways that we basically take like an A-frame with a piece of string and a weight. So I used a bolt to take things off of a car. You know, the wheel is the little bolt that you use to remove the little screws on a car. Yeah. And I hung it on a string, and basically you take this A-frame and you start at a point, and then you move it, and when the string is right in the middle with this weight, then you put another point. And then as you sort of move around your terrain, it gives you this level. It shows you how your soil moves and how it undulates. And so then you're able to create your beds. And so I had a friend come, and then he tilled it up this way, and he was very confused because he's a traditional farmer. He's like, well, what are you getting me to do? And it's a very interesting way to do your garden. It's much more like a walking path. Not necessarily as efficient if you're doing like annual farming production, because to get from here to over here, there's a little bit more of a walk. So in a way it slows you down, but if you're doing an annual production, it's a little bit more difficult. And so we decided to try the more traditional farming layout to over time compare to see which one is like more efficient, which one produces more food, because one is raised beds, the other ones are a lower bed. So we did this last year, so we're still in this process of learning which ones are better, and I think it's mostly because I like to have fun and apply different ideas from permaculture to my farm. We use manure from a farm close by for structure, so not so much to create the living soil, but to give it more aeration and space in it, because my soil is sandy, so it can easily be very compacted and pool water. And it's a pretty effective way to start increasing the aeration and space inside the soil. And I only turn my soil one time, so I turn it the first time, and then every year I just add on top, so that I'm not disrupting what I'm trying to create in the space. He was speaking about also using mulch. I use whatever I can, what I can get. Sometimes it's organic straw, sometimes it's their leaves, sometimes it's wood chips. They can be the dried wood chips, which have a lot of carbon, or they can be, because we're on a river, we have lots of willows growing, so I can go around, and lots of trees coming up that are green, and so you can chop those down and get a wood chipper, and those bring nitrogen into the soil. So I try to use as much as I can on my farm. Here we're growing garlic, and we spoke about that yesterday with Valerie. And we try to do workshops. These are a whole bunch of different seed farmers in Quebec who we have like a regroupement where we all go and visit each other's farms and try to give each other support and lessons and, you know, best practices. And it's kind of amazing that we have that because there's not a lot of seed farmers in Quebec. And so to be able to have resources and support is really important because it's always better when you're with community. And these are my only 2 workers. They're teenagers now, so they're not my workers. They have their own lives, but they are a big part of why I do what I do. I know that what I'm teaching them sinks in when they say certain things about what we're eating, or they'll be like, I ate a lot of sugar today and my stomach hurts. And like they're conscious of how food affects their body and how food is directly correlated to their health. That what I've offered them is a good life, to be outside and to be able to, during COVID, you know, they weren't stuck inside. I could say, just go outside and play. And so I'm hoping that wherever they end up, they bring some of that into their work and can make whatever space that they're in a better place. So that's my goal with them. I thought I would give you a little video of just how I store, before I get to the living soil, how I set up my seed spaces. So I haven't tested this yet. I hope it works in the, no. Oh, there we go.
Hello everybody. So this is a quick tour of my seed room. As you can see, there are Stephen's posters where I'm getting to learn about the Onaste and different Osaeta, and I have my seed packs here. So this is where I store the envelopes. This is for my business, which is in evolution, as I've mentioned already. This is where I'll fill in seeds, some beans. This is lots of Italian beans this year. This is lovely sisterly sunflower. And I can show you where I actually store. So this isn't where I store my seeds, it's where I store my envelopes. I'll show you where my actual storage space is. So here is the space where I actually store the seeds. So it's a nice sort of dark room that most people don't get to, like the kids don't come in here. It's got different beans, and I've got bins that have different varieties. So this is gonna be like my squash, and these are the different corns that I have, and the peas that I have. And this is down here my roots and my lettuces and all the different beans, because I love beans so much. So thank you for coming on the tour. And yeah, save seed.
Yeah, so I tend to put my seeds, I let them dry really well. So like, for example, Dan actually gave me this trick, is when you're saving bean seed, if you can bite it and there's your teeth marker in it, it's not ready. And if you bite it and it cracks, then they're ready, they're dry enough to be stored. Because if you store moist seed, it can rot. So, and I also really love, all my friends are so wonderful. They always bring me their little silica pouches from their vitamins, and it's like this little, they like do this little pilgrimage to my farm, and they're like, we brought this for you. And I put them into everything, like all of my seeds, just to take out that extra moisture. Even when I think they're dry, it's always good to have them. And I store them in glass, but there are people like Will Bonsall, who's, they call him the Noah of the Northeast, who has, oh my God, hundreds, if not thousands of seed varieties in Maine. He stores it all in envelopes that are labeled. So each seed saver has their different techniques. But I like the glass jars, although the envelopes are much more practical because you can stack more in one space. So I just wanted to go over again what sort of Graham had mentioned yesterday about the soil food web and how it is a whole community of different living entities and people, I guess, or animals that are all part of the process of having healthy soil, healthy living soil. When I first got to my farm, it had been sprayed, I guess, for 40 or 50 years with Roundup. So when we dug, because we had moved all our perennials, we dug, and within a meter square, there was maybe one earthworm, and I was kind of freaked out. I was just like, I don't know if my plants will actually be able to live here. So we just brought a bunch of organic matter and transplanted, and then laid like wood chip everywhere. And it didn't take very long. It took like a year for things to start coming back, and quickly. I was quite impressed at how intelligent like the soil actually is, and how intelligent the creatures and the earthworms and all of the bacteria, all of them, they just know that it's good to come back. Just like when, it's almost like the raccoons know when the corn is ready. They just like have this intuition about, okay, this is a safe place to come back to. So we're trying to create a healthy environment with a soil that is quite degraded, not doing very well. So I wanted to give like a closer profile of sort of like if we were to actually cut into a piece of soil, like what we want to see all of these amazing friends and family members sort of working away at making our soil healthier. And there's this symbiosis relationship where like an earthworm will, create space, but that same earthworm will feed the mole, which is also creating space and, pooping in the spaces and giving all the nutrients that the soil needs. And then when we go even smaller, we're getting into like the nematodes and the fungus and the bacteria that can be easily put out of balance, but can also easily be brought back into balance when you give it the right conditions with love and care. So I also think it's really important to mention, and the next slide will go even sort of deeper into like what the root looks like, but the plants have this ability to, especially beans and all of the nitrogen fixing plants, to sort of find what they need and bring it into the plant to be able to share it with other plants. But if you don't have and I'm still learning this, so and maybe Michaela can correct me if I'm wrong, if they don't have the proper sticky bacteria to help bring that nitrogen from one place to the other, then you have your plant doing the job, but it's sort of like someone who needs a key to be able to go to the next room. So there's like this, you can set up these situations or instances where you have your plants doing what they're supposed to be doing, but if there's not the extra community members that are in the soil helping, then they're just sort of waiting. And so the idea is to sort of bring all of these beautiful friends into their most healthiest potential. And so so like something like the root nodules on a bean plant, you would, if this is the root, there's like the little hair that comes out, and from what I'm understanding is the sort of gels that kind of are created around the soil aggregates, which are the pieces of soil, are what help the healthy bacteria that needs to grow to flourish, because you can have bacteria in your soil, like as we'll see with my soil, that is not healthy, and you can have fungus in your soil that's not good fungus, and that it actually harms your plants. So when you start bringing in healthier bacteria and nematodes and fungi, they kind of come and they balance it out. They don't necessarily get rid of everyone who, it's like a yin yang, I guess, this whole balance of they sort of feed off of each other. So the idea is to have all of these, especially I think the most important thing is the bacterial like layer of gel that really helps these plants do what they need to do, and getting that in our soil is what we're trying to do. So my farm in particular, because it was the soil was so mistreated for so long, is very bacterially dominated, which means there's lots of weeds. I have, I don't know how to say osei in English. It's like a sorrel. I have like a wild sorrel everywhere, and I have a certain type of plantain which shows that like the salt in my soil is really high, and so there's a lot of not the right types of bacteria in my soil, so it makes it that the soil structure isn't very strong. The fungi in my soil, like my plants have like white, sort of like white and black spots sometimes on them, which are all fungal. And because I don't have the proper balance of fungi and nematodes and bacteria, well, my plants actually aren't getting what they need from the bottom, and I am constantly trying to give it to them from the top, which is what I want to stop doing altogether. I don't want to have to be continually putting nitrogens and things on the top. I want to be able to sort of feed the soil from the bottom so the plants get what they need. Because I'm not a market gardener, I don't actually have to produce something for May or June. I'm not under the same pressures as a farm that's producing tomatoes that people want to eat, because I'm a seed farmer, or seed shepherd, as some of my friends like to call me. I can sort of take it. I don't have to necessarily have my soil heated up as quickly as some of my other friends who need to have a product in early June or mid-June. I can take my time and let the plants do their thing a little bit slower than them. And so I got this information from an organization called Docter, and they basically have suggested that I do a compost extraction, which I'm going to show you the tool that I applied for a grant, and I got the grant from EcoSerre, which is trying to help farms increase their biodiversity. And so I convinced them that by giving me something to help with the soil underneath, that they were actually helping me with my biodiversity, which was a bit of a tough sell at first, because I don't think it's necessarily part of their granting scheme. Not scheme, I don't mean the word scheme, schema, their granting approach to be necessarily thinking about all of the stuff underneath the plant. They're more up above the ground and bringing biodiversity back with birds and trees and stuff like that. So I had to convince them that that was something that my farm needed. So the solutions so far that we found that can help my issues on my farm in particular are adding a lot of compost on top, as Graham was proposing yesterday, to balance out the microbial life. And so this compost that I get is made by the organization that I'm going to present in the next slide. They make it so that all of these things that I need are already in the compost. So it's the idea is, I think around here, and maybe Dan might have other resources, but you have Compost Montreal, which has a living compost that I think they deliver. So there is access to living compost, and you can actually make your own compost. There are multiple, the Johnson Sioux approach, which was talked about yesterday, or actually physically turning your compost and creating the compost that you need to then put into the extractor. You can get that, and the idea is that through this extraction, which is a liquid, I'm going to be able to do 3 applications, one in spring to help the roots sort of wake up, that sort of wake up call of it's spring and get going, start waking up. Then in the middle of the summer, apply it to the leaves, this extraction. And then at the end of the season, apply it again near the roots, and no removing of any of the plants that are growing, because the root systems that are left in the soil are actually food for the good, like fungal mushrooms, basically. They eat that carbon, and so I've been told to not remove any of my plants. If you want like a clean sort of, soil view, you can cut it off, but to leave the roots in the ground, because that's when the mushrooms are basically proliferating, is in the fall and in the winter. That's when they do their work. They're eating the carbon off of the root system. So the idea is to leave that carbon matter inside. I think Graham had mentioned if you are going to turn in your wood chips, to do it in the winter as well, or the fall, because that's carbon material. So the mushrooms really like to eat that. So Ductaire is an organization that they do education. They are the ones who do the soil sampling. So I went around my farm and labeled, 1, 2, 3, 4. I took 10 samples. I told them where they were in my farm, and they analyzed each sample. Said like, oh, well, this one is, you have heavy bacteria in here, and it's not so good fungal here. You don't have enough soil aggregate, so that's why, things are pooling. They make this compost extractor, but I thought I would share it with you guys, because if you're at all handy, you can make it yourself. They give long-term support to farms. I mean, it costs, but they do support farms and organizations who wish to use their services. So the idea is, with this grant, that we're going to analyze to see how well my soil improves every year, to kind of there needs to be more farms doing what I'm doing, so that there can be more support for this type of approach of bringing more microbial life to the soil, and that it actually has a benefit on the plants, and that you can actually reduce the amount of inputs that you put on from the top. So the more farms that are willing to sort of be like experimental farms is better for the other farms who don't necessarily want to be the people taking the risk, but are interested in it. And so I hope that my small farm, which is 5 acres, can maybe be that example. And yeah, so this is their website if you're interested in looking up what they do. So the compost extractor, I'm going to bring this out. So this is what I ended up buying from, actually, wait, I'll put it up here. Is the compost extractor. Now, for small gardens, you don't need this big, you can actually use a small bucket. The idea is that in the compost, you have all of these living nematodes and bacteria and all of the things that the soil needs. And there's 2 ways to get it into a liquid form. You can do a compost tea, which is a much more, it's 24 hours, and you have you have aeration, and there's this process of having to make sure and check in on it. And I don't have the time or the interest in doing something for that long of a period. So the extractor is a much more effective tool for someone like me. Basically, what this is you could, for a smaller garden, you could take your 10-gallon, your bucket, and take a cup of the healthy compost, put it in one of those bags that you buy at the grocery store that are reusable, and you basically massage your compost in the water until there's no more color coming out of the compost. And you've basically taken off all of the goodies, and they're floating in the water into this water, and then you take that water and immediately put it into your soil. This is for it's a much larger surface area. So this thing with this, basically, my friend made me this much compost for this bag, and this bag goes inside of here, and there's a pump inside of here. I can show you. If you look, there's an actual pump. So this is so that I don't actually have to be massaging the compost. And I will be basically putting, where's the top? Here. So this, after I've put my compost into here, you put this onto the top, and there's air from that pump going into one, and then water coming out of the other one. Or water coming out of this one, sorry. Air coming in and the water coming out of this into a 1,000-liter tote. because I have a larger surface area. So as it flows, I can pay attention and see that the water is still flowing out brown and that the little friends and beasties are coming out into my water. And then once it's done, I can take that compost out and put it in because it's good for structure. And then I can either redo it with another bag of compost if I really want to pump up my soil, or just take that, and the idea is to pretty much immediately set it out onto your soil so that they can get in there and start doing their work. And so this is made through Docteur, but it's fairly easy of a concept to make on your own. And like I said, you don't actually need to have something this big if you're doing it on a small scale. You really can spread that liquid out from your 10-liter bucket and be able to cover a home garden with one bucket. The idea isn't necessarily to drop it all in one place, as if you're spreading them out and around, they can go and do their work and multiply and create healthier living soil. And the idea is that because it's liquid, you don't actually have to break the soil, which means you're not breaking the hypha strands, the mushroom strands that have been slowly being created over time of the soil being undisturbed, and adding new organic material. So the desired, yeah.
When you do this process, most of us have city water, so there's chlorine in it.
Yeah.
Chlorine or just rainwater?
I don't know, because I have a well, and I think the idea is to take distilled water. I don't know. What do you think, Michaela?
You can set your chlorinated water for 24 hours for the chlorine to off gas, if that's the best you can do. But the chlorine is antibacterial, so you want to try to have the best water you can give your soil. And if you only can have chlorinated water, then you can let it off gas for 24 hours before you put it in your composter.
Okay, thank you. That was a question because I know it's the chlorine kills off bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know how strong they were.
Yeah, I'm still like, this is like when Stephen asked me to present on this, I was like, oh, I can, but I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form. Like I'm learning everything within the last 6 months, basically. I always kind of knew about living soil, and I had been part of the permaculture circles, but I never dove deeper into it because seeds are already a very big part of my life, and I'm still a junior even with seeds. So living soil.
So are experts.
So are experts, exactly. So the idea, the hope is that that with this, my soil will have higher fungal presence, because I need to keep those sort of like more aggressive fungal issues in check, because it's not in check right now. You can see my plants, they struggle a little, and I have to do extra care. So my hopes is that the more that I give them love from the ground up, the less they need me from above, and I can hang out with my kids. To increase disease and insect resistance and attract the right types, although the insects aren't as much of an issue because we have so much diversity on the farm, and I had gotten another grant to put hedgerows and bird houses and bat houses on the farm, which dramatically increased the biodiversity on the farm, and that in itself, with them attracting other bugs and eating bad bugs and pooping and giving me what I need and everything, they're sort of doing a lot of the work for me. Sort of like Graham talking about the deer coming back in. He'd rather have the deer and rabbit come back in. And so that's sort of what's happening. We have a little too many deer, I would have to say, but that's, I think, a problem that we just have to maybe bring back some wolves. And then I have to get better with the water retention in my soil. So this year I'm also going to be probably adding like a clay powder Because it's so sandy, I'm going to be bringing in more organic material, a little bit of clay, basalt, and bentonite to be able to help my soil retain a little bit of water. It's sort of like I'm adding that sticky material to my soil. And better decomposition. It's true that the decomposition of my soil is still very slow. So I'm hoping that all of these will end up giving me better yields and sort of give me a little bit more freedom to enjoy my summers instead of constantly be sort of trying to micromanage all of the different things that are going on in the farm. And I'm not fooling myself. I know that farming is hard work and that there's always work to do on a farm. But if there's ways that I can get like this family of living things to kind of coexist in better harmony on the farm with me and with the soil, I'm really hoping, and maybe next year when I come back I'll have more information about it, that things will just flow a little bit better. And I know that's not a very scientific thing to say, but I'm hoping that that's the sort of goal of it, to that there's that the things require less intervention and that they are able to self-regulate themselves with my obviously giving them the attention that they need. But so yeah, that's sort of what I wanted to present today. Well,